You are listening to Viewpoints from PlaceCloud. Cultural researchers tell stories of places from around the world. For the full multimedia experience and to support the creators you enjoy, visit placecloud.io.
We stood here near to the site of the Whalebone. This tavern in Lothbury was once the headquarters of the Levellers, radicals who during the English Civil Wars proposed changes to the political and legal systems in what are today seen as early calls for democracy. The 17th century saw social and political upheaval, where the very notions of England and Englishness were challenged. It was a world turned upside down. In 1642, part of Parliament and the people of London had revolted against an unpopular king and his detested policies. A divided country then fought a bloody war in which a larger proportion of Englishmen died than in any conflict before or since. In 1649, a small group of politicians, lawyers and generals who had been radicalised by this conflict emerged holding power and put on trial a defeated king for committing treason against his own people. For the first time in history, a king was executed by his subjects. This period was briefly but intensely one of English Revolution. It was driven by thinkers and activists who propagated ideas, protested on the streets, and joined armies in the name of legal and religious freedoms which they felt were under threat. Increasingly, the clamour was to advocate for fundamental political and social changes, and while some were soon enacted, though later reversed, such as republicanism, the abolition of the Lords, and a degree of religious tolerance, others like free trade, equality under the law, and universal male suffrage would take centuries more to secure. While many radical groups emerged in this time, the Levellers were the radical movement of the Civil Wars. We can argue over the degree of their radicalism, their effectiveness, or the very nature of the Levellers as a movement. But undoubtedly, at some point, probably at least as early as 1647, emerged a broad coalition who then came to influence events before eventual suppression about 2 years later. In a world of cross-currents of ideologies, they were able to draw together certain points of radical thinking and people in a wave which knocked a hole through the bastions of the old authorities, the church and state. In the surge of revolution, the Levellers were not the most radical group, but they did command influence across society, from London mob to the common soldier to generals and MPs. They combined radical religious ideology with organisation learned from separatist churches and the new media of print, using things such as newsbooks and petitions. Most of all, they represented the people who made up Parliament's cause: new model army soldiers, tradesmen apprenticeships, Londoners of the middling sorts. It was in London where the Levellers found their base. They met chiefly at the Windmill and the Whalebone taverns, both in Lothbury behind the Royal Exchange. While the Windmill was important, the nearby Whalebone was much more so. Printer and one of the Leveller leaders, Richard Overton, printed 2 broadsheets in 1649, in which the tavern was named. In July 1649, another Leveller leader, John Whalebone, writing from imprisonment in the Tower of London, addressed his true friends and the citizens of London, usually meeting at the Whalebone, Lothbury. In time, the Levellers became known as the Whaleboners, and it was described, partly in jest, as one of their Houses of Parliament. Such was its importance to their movement. One of the ways the Levellers did their work was through petitions, subscribed by large numbers of people, and it was the Whalebone that found itself at the heart of at least one petitioning campaign. Whalebone said that the commissioners to promote the petition were to do so on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday evenings at the Whalebone, among other places across the country. Trustees in every parish were to be appointed to promote the petition, and a committee at the Whalebone Inn oversaw operations. This is where, according to Whalebone, cordial, honest, faithful Englishmen could meet. The Levellers were important steps on England's road to democracy, ahead of their time in many ways. The next time you have a drink in any pub, sit and give thought to what those meetings in the Whalebone and the Windmill would have been like. raise a toast to the words of Thomas Rainsborough, a radical army officer associated with the Levellers, who said, "For really I think that the poorest he that is in England hath a life to live as the greatest he."